Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Jagat Karanam Karana Jnana Rupam Surabhim Sukhadim Gunesham Ganesham Jagat Vyapinam Viśva Vandyam Suresham Parabrahma Rupam Ganesham Bhajema. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Team Param Vedanta extends a warm welcome to one and all for today's 83rd session of Bhagavad Gita verse by verse. Friends, Chhatrapati Maharaj is well known to all of us. He took birth in a divine and pure culture. He was a principle of effulgence, a divine inspiration, an immaculate personality. He was a powerful warrior, intelligent and smart statesman, and a general with exceptional high moral virtues. He was extremely secular. While he never compromised on his own religious roots, he had many Muslims in his military ranks as well. Known for his guerrilla warfare tactics and strong intelligence network to protect the weak and the needy. One who despite being powerful, used his powers only to conquer tyrannical Mughal rulers of the time and who tormented Hindus and forcibly converted them to Islam, as well as the exploitative British. He was an ardent devotee of goddess Bhavani, guided by his guru, Samarth Ramdas Swami. His thoughts and deeds were inspired by the teachings of his mother Jijabai, great saints like Sant Jnaneshwar, Sant Tukaram, and ideals of Lord Rama and Krishna. On behalf of Param Vedanta and all our viewers, we pay our obeisance to Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj on his Jayanti birth anniversary, which was on 19th February. Now, continuing our study of the 11th chapter, Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga, we shall see Arjuna, who is overwhelmed and petrified by the sight of Vishwarupa, focus his attention on the fierce and frightening mouth of the universal form. Mouth, which signifies the kāla tatvam or death principle. This is evident in the verses 26 to 30, which shall be explained by a team of Param Vedanta teachers, Dr. Sanjay Manakal, Sri Shivkumar Yadalam, Srimati Neeta Podar, Kumari Viksha, and Sri Madhusudan, under the guidance of our revered Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir, who will give us the introduction and key insights of the verses. Today's verses shall be chanted by young Aditi Binoj at the end. Let us begin today's session with a recap of the previous session's verses 21 to 25 by Srimati Jyoti Karthik. Over to Srimati Jyoti Karthik.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. This is a recap of the shlokas 21 to 25 of the Bhagavad Gita chapter 11, Vishwarupa Dharshana. To give a little bit of a background or a preamble, the Vedas present God depending upon the maturity of the seeker. In the beginning, there is a personal God, Ekarupa Ishvara or Ishtadevata Ishvara, a personal God with attributes. This is valid and helps a seeker to grow. My relationships with my Ishtadevata is an ideal relation, a God conceptualized with human attributes, a personal God in the initial stages. The Vedas say we should not stop at that. We should not just stop with one form, but include all of creation, all human beings, animals, trees, animate and inanimate things. This is Samashti Rupa Ishvara or Vishwarupa Ishvara or Aneka Ishvara. This will expand the mind of the devotee to totality, but even this is not sufficient. Vishwarupa is still another form within the realm of time and space and subject to change. The first emotion of Arjuna when he sees the Vishwarupa Darshanam was wonder and then fear. The third and last emotion is Sharanagati, complete surrender to the Lord, accepting the Lord as kāla tatvam. Arjuna does a namaskara to the Lord. He prostrates to the Lord. In this shloka, Arjuna describes how different people respond to Sri Krishna's Vishvarupa Ishvara. Devas who appreciate the Vishvarupa approach you with prayers, he says. They understand that your destructive form is dharmic. It is constructive destruction. Once it is understood properly, it is not frightening. Maturity is required to face death and destruction. He also says that there are others who approach you with sheer fear. Immature or ignorant people approach you with fear and for the removal of fear. Religion is often practiced because of fear. Once maturity is gained, fear is replaced by wisdom-based appreciation. Arjuna continues to say, the groups of enlightened rishis and siddhas with supernatural powers pray that there be auspiciousness in the world. These maharshis sing hymns that completely and comprehensively glorify you. The Vishwarupa is available to all who have Divya Chakshu. Vishwarupa comes into being the moment the universe is created. If someone is missing it, it is because of his cataract or ahankara and mamakara that is distorting his vision. Those who have the clear vision appreciate the Vishwarupa with wonder. Arjuna gives a long list of those who have Divya Chakshu, 11 Rudras, 12 Adityas, 8 Vasavas, and the three above are also entitled to receive oblations. The Sadhyas, Vishwadevas, Ashwinis, Marutas, Pitradevatas, all of them are entitled to the Vishwarupa Darshana through Divya Chakshu. Next slide. The nature of Arjuna's response changes from this shloka, which is number 23. While appreciating the Vishwarupa, Arjuna is particularly impacted by the mouth. Verse 19 describes the fiery mouth of conflagration of the Lord. Here the mouth represents a time principle. Kāla is responsible for origination, continuance, and destruction. In this context, kāla is represented as the destructive aspect of Ishvara. Arjuna is frightened by the destructive principle of Laya. Vishwarupa consists of pairs of opposites. The one who sees these as complementary features will not be frightened. Accepting only one side and rejecting the other creates a lopsided vision. Birth and death are two sides of Vishwarupa. Every moment, something or the other is born, something exists, and something is gone. When one can appreciate the born aspect of the Lord, he should be prepared to accept the gone aspect of the Lord also. All pairs of opposites, such as birth or death, growth and decay, union and separation, day and night, etc., are mangalam. The mature person has the attitude that there is nothing unacceptable. If this maturity is not there, Bhagavān will appear to be compassionate sometimes and cruel at other times. The cruelty perceived in Bhagavān arises from our own immaturity. Arjuna at this time is not mature enough to accept the other side of Ishvara. This fear aspect is described in verse 23 through 30. Next slide. Arjuna sees the Lord's effulgent form with manifold colors touching the sky. His inner mind is disturbed by the terrible form with large, shining, fiery eyes and open mouth and terrible teeth. He claims that he has lost the steadiness of his heart and his tranquility is disturbed. Old age is disturbing. Our immunity will be weaker and the diseases become stronger when kāla takes away the strength from people systematically. It is disturbing. Kāla is the integral part of Vishwarupa. In Bhagavatam, the Bhagavān is referred to as kāla. In the next slide. Arjuna again focuses on the terrible mouth and describes the feelings of his fear in the shloka. I see fearsome teeth protruding from your mouth. The teeth symbolize the pain caused to the individual. Kāla is the source of pain. Your mouths are comparable to Agni during Pralaya, he says. According to the scriptures, at the time of creation, the elements appear in this order: space, air, fire, water, earth. The dissolution takes place in the reverse order. Prithvi or earth is resolved in Jala tatvam, which is resolved in Agni tatvam. All 14 lokas resolve in Agni. I have lost the sense of direction, says Arjuna. These are only relative and are a reference point. I am greatly disturbed, says Arjuna. This is how atheists suffer. When they see suffering, they revise their opinion of God. Hey Jagannivasa, please be gracious to me, says Arjuna, begging for compassion. With this, we conclude the recap of the 21st to 25th shloka of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namah.
Thank you, Jyoti, for a nice recap of the verses that we studied in the last class. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We are continuing our study of the Viśva rūpa Ishvara Darshana. And let us see what is the significance. And as we are studying 5 verses per class, what is that we need to imbibe? The more we experience this world as God, both in the 10th chapter and in the 11th chapter, if I'm able to see anything good in the world as the vibhuti of the Lord, that means if I see some talent in anybody else, I will not be jealous about it. If I have some ability in myself, I will not feel proud about it, because now I know all these are vibhutis of the Lord. If everything in the world around me is none other than a manifestation of God itself, then I become more tolerant to other approaches, other religions, other forms of living. Also, as we are seeing the kāla tattva part, which is the very intense suffering part which we see in the world, which Arjuna is going through, and which Arjuna is experiencing, like all of us, a great sense of discomfort. These verses that we will study today help us to come to terms with suffering, disease, and possibly our own death. The introduction today is how a study of the Viśva rūpa Ishvara Darshana can be a stepping stone to the most difficult sadhana, the discovery of our rūpa Ishvara. Ultimately, as human beings blessed with Guru Shastra Tattva, our objective is to move from Eka Rūpa to Aneka Rūpa to Arūpa. This journey is going to be arduous. I require your attention and listen as if it is 3-person listening. 3-person listening is, I am teaching someone else. I am speaking, but you are listening. You are listening with the intention that I have to teach this to somebody else. And when you have to teach this to somebody else, your listening is going to be much more intense, because now you want to be very clear how Viśva rūpa Ishvara Darshana can be a stepping stone to Arūpa Ishvara. The world around me is existent. That means it is there. I can feel it is existent. My first exposure to what is this existence was through Swami Sukhabodhananda's existential laboratories, where under the guidance of a guru, you go to a natural environment where you are exposed to come in touch with nature. You sit on the bare ground without a mat, on the grass, on the mud, and feel the proximity of the bhumi. Part of the exercise is meditation around a bonfire, and you feel that warmth and the light and the sparks that come out of fire. All this is in silence. Part of the exercise would be to allow yourself to dip into water, feel the water, to feel the air, to experience space, to experience nature, to be able to communicate with trees and plants when they become alive. So you get to come closer to what is this existence and how am I related to existence. Now, to all of us who are sitting in the comfort of our room, let us do our own existential laboratory. That means I'm seeing so many existent objects around me. When I see any object around me, I'm seeing a wall, I'm seeing a mobile phone, I'm seeing a laptop. Ask yourself, when I see all these objects, there is something which is always there, because of which I'm able to see all those objects, but I tend to take them for granted. And what is that? We take the light on that object for granted. If there was no light on any of these objects, I would certainly not be able to see them. So from now on, an enlightened view of seeing any objects is, I see objects along with light. Never take the light for granted. Then we will do a process called Drik Drishya Viveka. That means I'm moving from the object to the subject. As I see the light on the object, I know one thing for certain. I'm able to see that object because my eyes are functioning. So I have moved from the object to my eyes. I know I'm able to see that object because my mind is awake. If I'm daydreaming or if I'm sleeping, even if a light is flashed into my eyes, I don't see, not because my eyes are not working, but because my mind is not awake. So every object I see light on that object. I see that object because my eyes are functioning. I'm able to see my mind, and I know my mind is inert by itself. My mind is enlivened by Atma or consciousness. Now, this journey from moving from the object to the subject is very well brought out in the Kenopanishad, in that great mantra, Pratibodha Viditam Matam. In every experience, can I come in touch with the experiencer? Let us go a little more detail. Now we have reached from the object to the subject. I have come in touch with this consciousness in me. Now let us do this existential laboratory in a little more detail. I see so many objects around. Objects are many. Objects are variable. But the one who is seeing is only one. The one who is seeing is constant. Remember, objects are variable and many, but the experiencer, the one who's seeing, is only one. Now, this is in the waking world or Jagrat Prapancha. What happens in the dream world? In the dream world also, I see so many objects, but I know the one who is observing the dream is the same Sakshi principle. When I am asleep, I don't experience anything. There is total blankness. But when I wake up, I know I have slept well because there is a conscious principle that has been there in and through my deep sleep to tell me that all those dream experiences or no experiences, I am the witness of all those experiences. So, objects of experience are many, but the experiencer is the same, whether I am in the waking world, in the dream world, or in the deep sleep world. The next exercise that we do as part of our existential laboratory is to look at your own photograph when you are a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old boy or a girl and answer this question to me. As you look at that photograph of that little boy or girl that you were, over the years, you will see so much your body has changed, so much your mind has changed, so much your thoughts have changed, so much your outlook has changed. Many, many things have changed on you, but there is something in you that has never changed. Now let us analyze what is that something that has never changed in all these years. That means once I was a boy, then I was a little grown up, then I've reached a certain state that I have come. But the observer within me is the same. Now that principle, that which never changes in all 3 periods of time, in all stages of your life. Sometimes I've been rich, sometimes I've been poor, sometimes I've been sick, sometimes I've been healthy. But the one who's been experiencing all these avasthas is considered truth. That chit is now considered sat. So my true nature is sat, Chit, Atma. In the Tattva Bodha, Sat is given as a definition. It says Sat Kim, Kāla Traya Api Tishtati Iti Sat. that which is present in all the avasthas, that which never undergoes change, that is called Sat. So the consciousness in me which is present all the time is also the existence in me which is called is Sat. That is why Bhagavān Ramana in the Upadesha Sara has said, Sattva Basika Chit Kvave Itara Sattayahi Chit Chittayahi Aham. That means this Sat Chit is me, and I cannot separate Sat from Chit, because Sat, which seems to be outside, is none other than the Chit within me. The next big question for all of you is, whom do you love the most? The answer is very obvious. All of us love ourselves the most. What I love is constantly changing, but there is one thing that I have been always constantly and unconditionally loving, that is, I love myself. The question is, why do I love myself unconditionally? Would I love any object which is a source of sorrow? Certainly not. You will see, you will love only objects which are a source of joy, or which I hope is a source of joy. Now, if there is one person that I love all the time, then this me must be a source of happiness. Now, believe it, I must be a source of joy. So you will see, without going through all the scriptures, through what is called yukti and anubhuti, through my own experiences and through logic, we have been able to deduce our true nature is Sat, Chit and Ananda. The nature of God is what? Sat, Chit, Ananda. That means my nature is the same as the nature of God. Now, this is what is called self-realization. Self-realization is not any other exercise. It is to be able to perceive that perceiver who is there in and through every experience in all stages of my life. Pratibodha viditam matam. Self-realization is only to shift the attention from the objects of my experience to the observer and to anchor on that which is of the nature of Satchit Ananda or Satchidananda. Let us always remember this Kenopanishad verse, Prati Bodha Viditam Matam. In every experience of my life, can I move and become aware of that experiencer in me? Bhagavān Shankaracharya has summarized all that I have said so far in one beautiful verse of the Sri Dakshinamurti Stotra, which I will request Shamala to chant for us. Shamala, please.
Bādishvapi jāgradādishu tatha sarvāsvavasthāsvapi vyāvruttāsvanuvartamānamahamityantah sada swātmānam prakatīkaroti bhajatām yo mudraya bhadraya Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namayidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namayidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye.
Shamala, you will see how crisply in this one verse Bhagavān Shankaracharya has said all that I have spoken in the last few minutes. This verse is Balyadishu. My body goes through various states. Sarvastu avastastu. I go through waking, dream, deep sleep, rich, poor, sick, healthy. In all avastas, anuvartamanam. There is something that is common in all these variable states. And what is that? Aham iti antaspurantam sada. That which shines forth, that consciousness that I am, is constant and non-changing, that Sat-Chit aspect in me all the time. And how do I know that? Bhagavān Dakshinamurti never communicates through words. In silence, he gives us this Mahamudra, this great auspicious Bhadra Mudra, by saying, can you move away from the three bodies? Can you move away from the three avasthas? Can you move away from the three gunas? Disidentify from your vyavahara self, identify from the Atma. And when you identify Swatmanam, your true nature, Swa-Atma, and Dakshinamurti Prakati Karoti, he will announce Bhajatam to those devotees, Yo Budraya Badraya. Through this auspicious sign, he helps you to discover that non-changing Sat-Chit Ananda Tattva Purnatvam within all of us. Whatever I have shared with you is possible because of none other than Sri Dakshinamurti, who is manifest to all of us in the form of our Guru Swami Paramarthanandaji. So in conclusion, we began by seeing what is the significance of Viśva rūpa Ishvara Darshana. Today's focus was how I can use my ordinary experiences of seeing the world around me to step into a discovery of my true nature, which is formless, or arūpa Ishvara. What is existent is outside, which is Sat. From the light on the object, I have moved to my eyes, to my mind, and I know Pratibodha Viditam Matam. From boyhood through all ages, that Atma Tattva, which is the real me, and if I'm able to anchor onto that, that is the discovery of self-realization. We will continue our study of verse 26, which will be explained to us by Dr. Sanjay Banakal. Over to you, Dr. Sanjay.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Arjuna's description of Vishwarupa continues in these verses. He goes through various phases of emotions by seeing the universal form of the Lord. Initially, he was wonderstruck and overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the universe, which was made available by granting a special vision. Krishna called it as Divya Chakshuhu, where the world appeared extraordinary for Arjuna. This wonder was replaced by fear when Arjuna saw the blazing mouth of the Lord, which was destroying everything. In Vishwarupa Darshana, the mouth of the Lord symbolically represents the time principle, which is an integral part of the creation. Time devours everything and appears cruel for a person who does not have a mature mind. What is meant by a mature mind or a prepared mind? A mind which is free from ego, that's ahankara and mamakara, attained by going through sadhana chatushtaya, is a mature mind. Such a person looks at the world objectively from a public standpoint. He has a wider vision of the world. On the other hand, for a person who does not have a prepared mind, the world is seen from his own individual standpoint. This narrow vision makes one to divide the world into favorable and unfavorable. World is made of pairs of opposite, like birth and death, health and disease, etc. A mature person looks at them as complementary and not as opposite to each other. Since Arjuna did not have a prepared mind, he was terrified to see the destructive aspect of time in the Lord. His expression of fear is described in these verses. In verse number 26, he describes about the close-up view of the Lord's mouth, wherein he describes about the people who are entering the mouth and getting destroyed. Let us look at this verse, number 26. Ami chatvam dhritarashtrasya putraha sarve sahaivavani pala sanghai Bhishmo drona suta putras tathasau sasmadiyairapi yodhamukyai. Let us look at the meaning of each word. Sarve cha ami, all these Dhritarashtrasya putraha, sons of Dhritarashtra, saha eva, along with Avanipala Sanghai, host of kings, Bhishma, Drona, tatha asau Sutaputraha. Sutaputra means Karna here. Saha api, along with Yodhamukhe, prominent warriors, Asmadiyai, of ours, Tvam, you. In this verse, the verb is not given, which we need to look at from the verse number 26. So the meaning of this verse is, all the sons of Dhritarashtra, along with hosts of kings, Bhishma, Drona, and that son of the charioteer, Karna, along with the prominent warriors of ours, are entering you. Arjuna could not imagine the death of Viśva and Drona in this war. That's the reason why he did not want to fight. But here in Vishwarupa, he sees exactly that. Viśva and Drona, along with Karna, are being swallowed with the Lord, which is a symbolic representation of their destruction. Arjuna might have been happy with the death of Karna or Kauravas, but Bhishma and Drona are very dear to him. Why does it happen? This is because the play of ahankara and mamakara, causing raga and dvesha. Our view of world gets fragmented due to this narrow vision and is a source of fear and misery. Wise people recognize that time is integral to the universe and look at the world objectively. It's no longer a source of fear for them. Death of oneself or near and dear ones cause intense fear, and the only way to escape the fear of death is to go beyond time. That is to embrace the Atma Tatvam through self-inquiry. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay, for a nice explanation of this particular verse. And as we see the experience that Arjuna is going through, the thought of the death of those whom he likes, Bhishma and Drona, frightens him, and his experiences are very natural to all of us. Even the thought of someone near us the thought that we might lose somebody, brings a lot of fear in our own mind. Is there some way that we can do in our daily life that will help us to prepare us for this kāla tattva, which is eventually going to consume my own family and myself? The Ishavasya Upanishad, which we studied some time ago, has a set of 4 verses towards the end. Very rarely in an Upanishad you have a prayer, and this is a beautiful prayer. A lot of people use this prayer in the early morning during sunrise. That is perfectly fine. But the same set of prayers can be chanted around sunset, because sunset is an indication every morning we are born, every evening we prepare to die. And if you do this exercise, Hiranmayena Patrena, this is an address to the sun. O sun, can you remove that golden disc? Patra means disc. Hiranmaye means golden. Satyasyahi pitam mukham. O Surya Bhagavān, can you show me your true face? Tatvam Pushanna Parvan. You are the one who is nourishing me. Satya Dharmaya Drishtaye, so that you can show me the right path. And this and the set of prayers help us to prepare for our own death. Our next verse, which is on the same theme, will be explained by Shiv Kumar. Over to you, Shiv.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vaktrani te tvaramana vishanti, damstra karalani bhayanakani, kechit vilagna dashanantareshu, sandhrashyante churnitairuttamanghaihi. Actually, this verse is a continuation of the previous verse, which was beautifully explained by Dr. Sanjay Banekar. This verse is a poetic graphic description by sage Vyasacharya, where Arjuna continues to describe the frightening, fierce mouth of Vishwarupa Ishvara. He says, Te Vaktrani Vishanti Tvaramanaha. We saw in the previous verse, Dhritarashtra Putras, Bhishma, Drona, all the king's soldiers are themselves rushing with great speed into your mouth, which is Bhayanakani Damstra Karalani, frightening with terrible, protruding, sharp canine teeth. Samdrishyante, I am seeing them, Kechid Vilagna Dashanantareshu, some people ground and are caught between the gaps in the teeth. like partially eaten meat, torn and hanging. Churnitai uttamanghai, with their head crushed, some with their legs crushed, some with their stomachs crushed. Looking at this, I am terribly frightened. Friends, the fact that the kings and soldiers are themselves rushing into the Lord's mouth means that Ishvara does not favor anyone. Every individual creates his own destiny by the fruit of his choices and actions. The example of head, leg, etc. crushed is symbolic of different kinds of diseases, taking away different parts like kidney failure, heart attack, failure of pancreas, etc. In the previous as well as in this verse, Arjuna referred to the teeth of Vishvarupa Ishvara. The significance of this is that we use our teeth to grind our food. God's teeth are force of destruction that grinds everyone to death with passage of time. I would like to conclude with a short poem called Retribution by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, who derived this from the poetical works of the 17th century German poet Friedrich von Logau. Von Logau in turn was referring to a Greek philosopher, Sextus Empiricus, but Sextus Empiricus was himself quoting an unknown poet. So the origin is anyone's guess. The poem as in the slide. Though the mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceedingly small. Though with patience he stands waiting, with exactness grinds he all. Arjuna continues to describe the Vishvarupa in the verses to follow. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you, Shiv Kumar, for another nice explanation of a very graphic, gory verse and one of the most terrible verses to describe of the time of death. So, as I said, if we are prepared for the winter of our lives, we will go through all seasons of the life. And this preparation is not a preparation that comes at some stage. It is a preparation that we need to do every day. Every evening around sunset, let us make this prayer. I am continuing the same prayer of Ishavasya Upanishad. Pushan Ekarase, O nourisher, Ekarase, the one who travels alone. You're referring to the sun. Yama. Yama means the controller. Yama could refer to Yama Dharmaraja, but here Yama refers to the controller who regulates our timing. Because of the sun, we wake up. Because of the sun, we go to bed. Yama, Surya, Prajapatya, who are all the sons of Prajapati or Brahmaji. Yuvarasmin Samoha. Please withdraw your rays. Tejo yatte rūpam kalyanatamam. So that I may be able to see your auspicious face. Tatye pashyami. And when you remove this, what do I see? Yosahaso purushaha sohamasmi. It could be interpreted as I see myself. Of course, if you see the context, this is not a Mahavakya. It has been explained that this is a certain about sadhana that you are able to see yourself in the Lord. We will continue to the next verse, verse 28, to be explained by Dr. Vasumati. Over to you, Vasumati.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Arjuna's description of the Lord's mouth continues in this verse. We know by now that the Lord's mouth represents the time principle. It is not the physical mouth that is being talked about. The time not as a creator principle, but time as the destructive principle, the kāla agni. Because kāla has got all the three functions of origination, sustenance, and destruction, and kālam is an integral part of Vishvarupa Ishvara. As what we fear the most and want to avoid keeps chasing us in our thoughts, Arjuna's mind too, again and again, goes to the mouth of the Lord. The 28th verse goes like this. Yata nadinam bahavo ambuvegaha samudrameva abhimukha dravanti tata tavami naraloka veera vishanti vaktrani abhichvalanti. Next slide, sir. Here, it is not just the lot of soldiers alone, but this is the lot of all the living beings, because all of us will have to ultimately be resolved. Next slide, sir. Because life is nothing but avyakta avastha and vyakta avastha, manifest and unmanifest states. We all have come and we have to go back to the Lord in the cycle of punarapi jananam and punarapi maranam. This is the very course of life. Next slide, sir. Therefore, Arjuna sees all of them entering the mouth of the Lord, and he wants to give an example in this verse. The example is that of the rivers. There are countless rivers on the land representing various names and forms. All of them are rushing towards only one destination. Even though they travel in zigzag motion, ultimately they move into the ocean. Akashat patitam toyam yata gacchati sagaram sarvadeva namaskaram keshavam pratigacchati. Next slide, sir. Why do the rivers have to enter Sagaram? Sagaram, we know, means Samudra, because they have all originated from the ocean only. Even though it appears that the rivers are originating from the mountains, we should remember that from the ocean alone, water evaporates and becomes cloud, becomes rain and becomes rivers. Ultimately, rivers come from ocean. They have to go back to ocean. All of us are like rivers. We have come from the Lord and we have to go back to the Lord. Next slide, sir. And therefore, Arjuna gives the river examples and says, Nadinam ambuvegaha. Ambuvegaha means streams or tributaries. So, various streams of river. Bahavaha, many in number. Samudrameva abhimukha dravanti. They're all flowing only in one direction. And what is that direction? Samudram abhimukam. They're all going towards the ocean only. Even though in a particular place, it may appear that they are flowing in the opposite direction, ultimately it will go to the ocean alone. Therefore, Samudrameva abhimukha dravanti. Facing the ocean, they're all rushing. Next slide, sir. In the same way, all of us, tata ami naraloka viraha. All these great warriors with their protective armor also, vishanti vaktrani, they're all entering your mouth, says Arjuna. What type of mouth? Abhivijvalanti, which are blazing with Agni. Swamiji says here, no protective armor, no personal security system, no self-defense will work in our favor when kāla comes and nobody can stop despite the best of our efforts. Hari Om. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Vasumati, for a nice explanation of this verse with very nice pictures, examples, and illustrations. We are now seeing a situation where the river is meeting the ocean, which is also descriptive of the end of our life. Now, as we have said that many times, the more we are prepared for the end of our life, the more we are prepared, if I can use the winter of our life, it is not going to come as a shock. It may come more as a level of acceptance. See the same prayer from the Ishavasya Upanishad. Here is a person who is on his deathbed, and now he makes this prayer, Vayur Anilam Amritam Adedam. Let my breath become one with the air. Now, a person has now accepted one's death. And I have lived. Now I am experiencing my death. I'm not going to fight with my death. The next verse is so graphic. He says, Basmantam Shariram. May my body be reduced to basma, to be into ashes. But of course, there is also a moment of test. The person is a little anxious, but then he addresses to God, Om Krato Smara, Kratagam Smara, Krato Smara, Kratagam Smara. Oh Lord, I have made mistakes in my life, but I've done a lot of good things also. Can you be kind enough to remember all my good things? And so it is very nice in the state of death that although I have made mistakes, I see the Lord as somebody so big, as someone who's able to forgive me, and I have absolutely no sense of regrets for anything in my life. We'll continue to the next verse, which will be explained by Viśva. Over to you, Viśva, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Yatha pradiptvam jalanam pratanga vishanti nashaya samriddha vegaha tathaiva nashaya vishanti lokas tavapi vakrani samriddha vegaha. In this stage of our study of the Gita, Sri Krishna is giving us an explanation as to how destruction is a necessary part of life. Now, we may ask, isn't it cruel to derive pleasure from destruction? It may be true from a relative standpoint, but not from the absolute standpoint. If old trees and animals do not die in a jungle, new ones cannot be created. If old businesses aren't allowed to fail, new startups cannot bring innovative products to the market. If no one dies, the earth is unable to sustain the needs of an infinitely growing population. Arjuna now gives a comparison. He compares the brave soldiers and noble kings who laid down their lives in the battlefield to the waves that willingly merge into the ocean. There are also others who fought out of greed and self-interest. Arjuna compares them with moths being lured ignorantly into the incinerating fire. But in both cases, they are marching rapidly towards their imminent death. In the previous shloka, Arjuna gave the example of rivers flowing into the ocean to indicate the ultimate dissolution of all names and forms back to their source, Ishvara. Some may raise a doubt here. They may say, water is inert, so naturally it goes wherever the flow takes it. In order to dispel this doubt, Arjuna gives the example of moths that rush towards a flame and are eventually destroyed. By showing the process of destruction at such a grand scale, Sri Krishna also wants to remove Arjuna's fear of death. Since the physical body goes away after death, there is no question of pain once we die. We are scared not about the pain of death, but about losing all of our identity along with our possessions and attachments. The name and form that we have become attached to and its network of relationships and other names and forms is what ultimately gets dissolved. But how does our fear of death go away? Next slide, Doctor. We often forget that our journey is just a cycle that begins from Ishvara, the source, and ends back into the same source. So even though Arjuna was scared of Ishvara's monstrous form, he understood that there was nothing to be scared about destruction. It was a bona fide part of Ishvara's creative process. When we finally come to the understanding that death is nothing but a return of our name and form into that of Ishvara's, our fear of death will go away, or at least diminish to a great extent. In fact, when we become a devotee of Ishvara, death loses its unpleasantness because now it means a return to the original source of the universe. We begin to lead our lives with a great degree of courage and fearlessness because we now know how it will all end. Thank you, Shri Guru Bhagavān.
Thank you, Viśva, for a nice explanation of this verse, which is again preparing us through the words of Arjuna to see how we will be able to come to terms with our own death. This is another daily prayer. It can be part of your morning prayer when you light the lamp, or it could be part of the concluding 4 prayers of the Ishavasya Upanishad to be chanted every evening, which will help us to prepare for that moment of our death. Agne naya supataraye asman. Asman means for us, O Agni. Supataya supataraye. Show me the right path. Vishwani Deva Vayunani Vidvan. O Agni Deva, you are Vidvan, you are all knowing. Yoyo Jasmat Juhuramanenam. Bhuishtamtim Nama Uktim Videma. Now the scene is a person who is in the intensive care. Now, intensive care means a person is sick, a person is in his deathbed. And when you are in the deathbed, you are not able to do any form of namaskara. But still you tell him that because of my limitations, I'm not able to prostrate on you, but I know you are big. that I have done many good things, focus on whatever good that I have done and forgive the bad in my life. I will do repeated namaskaras to you. And this is a nice prayer addressed to Agni Devata, which can be done in the morning when you light the lamp, or in the evening whenever we light the lamp, and also a prayer as part of the preparation for our own death. The last verse today will be explained to us by Sukanya. Over to you, Sukanya.
Hari Om, sir. Vishwarupa Darshana is an understanding of a trained mind to see the entire creation of names and forms as an embodiment of Ishvara. A trained mind of a yogi has the ability to understand the universe as God. Sarvabhutastam atmanam sarvabhutani cha atmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshanaha. The cosmic form of the Lord, with all the names and forms, is Vishwarupa, which is subject to limitations of time and space. In verses 9 to 14, Krishna revealed his brilliant cosmic form, which Arjuna appreciated. In 15 to 20, Arjuna expressed wonder, seeing the glory of the Lord. Verses 23 to 30 represent destruction of the names and forms, which was fearful, and Arjuna was not able to withstand this fierce sight. His emotions transformed from wonder to fear to bhakti to surrender. Arjuna represents all of us. His intense fear was due to ahankara and mamakara, which is explained in this verse. Leli hese grasamana samanta lokan samagran vadanai jwaladbihi tejopi apurya jagat samagram bhasasta ugra pratapanti Vishnu. Swallowing all the words on every side with thy flaming mouths, thou art licking thy lips. Thy fierce rays, filling the whole world with radiance, are burning, O Vishnu. Leli hese, relishing, licking lips, indicating enjoyment of eating food. Here, it's swallowing people in the war, just as a foodie enjoys a wonderful, tasty food. Whole space here is symbolic of the Ishvara's plate, and every object in creation symbolic of the food items. Samagran lokan samantat. In totality, stretching all over. Lokan samagran. Vadane jwaladbihi. Lord devolves with his huge mouth. Mouth is symbolic of the kāla agni, blazing heat. Heat is the kāla tatvam. Your radiance pervades the entire universe, that is scorching. Samagran jagat aporya. Lord pervades the entire universe, all the lokas, with his radiance, affecting all beings. Tava ugra bhasa pratapanti Vishnu. The fierce heat of your radiance is pratapanti, scorching, lamenting people. O Lord Vishnu, sarvam viveshti iti Vishnu, that which surrounds everything. Next slide, sir. The above symbolic representations are also indicated in Vishnu Sahasranama. Bhu pado yasya nabhi yada suranila chandra suryo cha netre karnavashaha shiro dhru mukam api dahano yasya vaso yaviddihi. The whole universe is the avatar of the Lord, directions as his ears, sun and the moon as his eyes. Next slide, sir. In Kurukshetra battle, soldiers in both the armies die. This is symbolic representation of the Kāla Chakra, time cycle, Srishti, Sthiti, and Laya, an integral part and property of creation. Time aspect is manifestation and unmanifestation, wherein the objects in creation arise, grow, decay. Kurukshetra war was a destructive aspect of the Kāla Chakra. Next slide, sir. Kāla Chakra enables objects in creation undergo modifications, Shadvikaras, Asti, Jayate, Vardhate, Viparinamate, Apakshiyate, and Vinashyate. Because of these modifications, we experience the good and the evil in creation. As Krishna says, Maya dhakshena prakatihe sueteta characharam hetu nanina kaunteya jagadvit parivartate. We need to accept the cycle of birth and death, union, separation, health and ill health as Mangalam, and live in tune with the Kāla tatvam. This is the Vedantic perspective. As Swamiji says, either we accept both Adbhutam and Ugram as Mangalam or reject both as Amangalam. Arjuna accepts only the creative aspect, not the destructive aspect. That's why his fear. Next slide, sir. Tsunami, tornadoes, earthquakes, and the corona pandemic are all illustrations of the terrible manifestation of Ishvara in Kāla Chakra. Ishvara enjoys this as indicated in Leli Hese because it's inevitable to maintain universal harmony, destroy the evil, uphold righteousness. For a mind not refined, death appears fearful because of attachment. When the mind has the vision that Ishvara is the embodiment of totality, both in creation and destruction, it's not difficult to accept birth and death as two sides of the same coin. Shastras have endowed us with enough scope for wisdom to understand birth and death. If we do not use the opportunity to understand and accept totality, we'll suffer in samsara. Next slide, sir. Paritranaya sadhuna. Even though war is terrible, consequent upon death and destruction, it's inevitable, according to the Lord, to establish dharma. In order to maintain dharma, to save totality in the universe, it becomes necessary to eliminate certain evils. Next slide, sir. Trained mind of a yogi who is wise has the attitude to see everyone, all situations alike, good and the ugly. Atma upammena sarvatra samam pashyati Arjuna, and yomam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati. These verses should be understood in the right perspective. Otherwise, Bhagavad Gita will be looked as a book of violence and Krishna promoting war. Yuddhasva vigata jvara, which should mean fight with your internal enemies without anxiety. The right perspective should also be Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam Jagat. After seeing this fearful Vishwarupa of the Lord, Arjuna has a doubt as to whether the Lord is sympathetic at all. So in the next verse, he questions, Akhyahimeko Bhagavān Ugrarupo, Namostu Deva Vara Prasida. Salutations to you, Lord. Who are you with this fearful form? Hari Om. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sukanya. That was a very nice explanation, a very comprehensive explanation of this verse, which Arjuna has reached his limits, seeing the terrible form of Lord Krishna. And as you said, in the next set of verses, which we'll be studying in the next class, Arjuna addresses Krishna and says, Ko Bhagavān, who are you, showing me such terrible aspect of you? And Krishna replies then, kālosmin, I am the time principle. The time principle is that principle because of which we are born, because of which we grow, because of which we age, and because of which we die. So we need to be able to accept all these aspects as Viśva, rūpa, Ishvara darshana, which we'll be seeing in the next class. And in one of these verses, verse 33, you have a very controversial statement, which has to be properly understood, where Shri Krishna calls Arjuna nimitta matrena bhavasavya sachi. You are just an instrument in my hands. And the whole question comes, is there a free will? All this we will see in the next class, and we will have the chanting of today's verses by Aditi. Over to you, Aditi.
Harihi Om Satgurubhyo Namaha. Ami Chatvam Dhritarashtrasya Putraha Sarve Sahaiva Vanipala Bhishmo Dronasuta Putrastatha Sahasmadiyayirapi Yotha Mukhyaihi Vaktrani te Tvaramana Vishanti Damshtrakaralani Bhayanakani Kechid Vilagna Dashanantareshu Samdrishyante Churnitairuttamangai Yata Nadinam Bahavo Bhuvegaha Samudrameva Bimukha Dravanti Tata Tavami Naraloka Veera Vishanti Vatranya Abhivijvalanti Yata Pradiptam Jvalanam Patamga Vishanti Nashaya Samriddha Vegaha Tataiva Nashaya Vishanti Lokaha Tavapi Vatrani Samriddha Vegaha लेलिह्यसे ग्रसमानः समन्तात् लोकान् समग्रान् वदनेर्ज्वलब्धिः तेजोभिरापूर्य जगत् समग्रम् भासस्तवोग्राः प्रतपन्ति विष्णु हरिः ओम् श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम्.
Hearty thanks to our respected Dr. Timoppa Hegde sir and all the teachers of Param Vedanta for the wonderful, excellent presentations. And our young Aditi Binoj for your excellent, perfect chanting of the day's verses. Thank you, participants, for joining us in today's study. Dr. Hegde has already given us the introduction to the next 84th session on 25th February 22nd, where we shall continue study of the verses 31 to 35 of the 11th chapter. Remember to join and benefit from the teachings of this invaluable itihasa. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.